Okay. Good morning, everybody, to this webinar hosted by SEMLEP, the South East Midlands Local Enterprise Partnership, which covers Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes. First of all, let me tell you a bit about SEMLEP and the Growth Hub. We are here to support business, no matter what stage in the life cycle that you are. We offer fully funded business support, advice, guidance, connections with the wider business ecosystem. And we can help, whether it be through the programs that we offer, whether it be through one-to-one reviews of your business, or attending like this webinars that help you understand where your business is at and gives you some hints and tips of where to go in the future. So last year has been a tumultuous year for most businesses. You know, no one would have expected what would happen to the economy, to business, when the pandemic struck and lockdown 3 we're just about to come out of. But now that we are coming out of it, now is time to look at resetting your business, looking at where it's at now and how you can look to rebuild that and regrow for the future. And this webinar will support that view of how to get back to where you were, even better than where you were, just to re-establish what your business model is, how to grow it again. Now, with me today, I have got partners from the Growth Hub and from the University of Bedfordshire. So with me, I have Neil Webb, who is a high growth business advisor from the Growth Curve team. We have David Harding and Leslie Goodship from the University of Bedfordshire, and a gentleman called Simon Phillips from Tech Fire and Security Limited, who will provide you with an understanding of what it's like to receive the support that we do give here at the Growth Hub. And what I did forget to say was who I was. I'm Ruth Cousins, and I look after the business advisor team here at SEMLEP's Growth Hub. We are more than welcome to answer any questions that you may have, but if I ask that you put them in the chat and leave them to the end, that would be great. So if I can hand over now to the Growth Curve Masterclass Taster session, then we will get things moving. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm assuming you can all hear and see me. Can I just get a thumbs up from somebody so they can hear me? Thanks. Oh, thanks, Janet. I can see you there. Good morning. Right, let me just organize my screen, folks. I won't be a second. Then I'll introduce myself. Let's start the video properly. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see you on this beautiful sunny morning. It's quite cold where I am in North Bedford, but I hope you're all keeping warm and have had a great Easter weekend. My name is David Harding. I work at the University of Bedfordshire, and I've been delivering the Growth Curve sessions or masterclasses for over 12 months now. We've had great attendance. It's been a really interesting time. Obviously, a lot of companies are dealing with issues around growth and, well, in some cases, survivability given COVID. Just this morning, I'm going to talk to you for about 15, 20, maybe 25 minutes about some of the key aspects of what we cover should you decide to attend the masterclasses. But just really briefly, before I do that, can I just throw a general question out to the audience and ask if anybody currently has a documented growth strategy in place? And it's okay if you haven't. I'm just curious to see where people are at the moment. Okay. Fine. Okay, so in that context then, I'll just introduce you now to some of the sort of key areas we cover in the Growth Curve session. So bear with me while I share my screen. I'll be 2 seconds on that. Okay, so I'm hoping you can all see a slide that says Growth Curve Overview on it. Okay. Is that working for everybody? And can you all see it?
Yeah, we've got it, David.
Fantastic, thank you. Again, just bear with me. Sorry, it takes me. I have two screens, so it takes me a while to get organized. Good. Okay. Right. So what we've found when we've been working with companies over the last sort of 12 to 18 months is that they tend to be struggling with what we're starting to call this aspect of sort of duality management. And basically what this is really recognizing is that there's a sort of simultaneous process going on in all organizations where they're trying to keep the lights on, but they're also trying to grow at the same time. And one way we think about this is we talk about forecast in terms of growth or forecasted growth. And most people we speak with talk about pounds and pence. So they're talking about planned revenue increases. So this little diagram here is just suggesting that there is a way to kind of forecast that demand. However, what tends to happen is this: the phone starts to ring, and it's very, very difficult. In fact, it's almost impossible to say no to potential customers, and particularly if these are new customers. The last thing you want to do is to kind of put them off from awarding you new sales. So what tends to happen is you have this apparently uncontrolled and sometimes unexpected change in demand. And the demand can go up. You can have lots of phone calls and lots of orders, or equally it can plummet. And I suspect that's happened for a lot of companies over the last 6 to 12 months or so. But irrespective of what happens, that demand is unexpected. Should the phone start ringing, I guess you react to this and you do your best to deliver to the sort of customer requirements. And that's fine. That's kind of business as usual. But what we also find is while people are busy reacting to unexpected demand, costs start to suffer. It gets very, very hard to work out where your spend is going. If you're constantly saying yes to customers or to unexpected demand, then of course it's almost impossible to plan what your costs are going to look like going forward. So if you don't have this kind of perception of your business that there is a planned demand and therefore a need to plan your costs and your resources, the whole feeling within an organization is it can start to feel like you're getting out of control. You're constantly reacting and in constant catch up potentially. And it's very, very hard to make priorities. And of course, the most difficult situation to find yourself in is when a customer contacts you, is are you able to get yourself into a position where you can, with some confidence, you can say no to your customer. Now, when I say no, I don't literally mean say no to a customer. What I actually mean is to be able to have a conversation with a customer and make a promise which you can actually keep. So how do you start to develop these customer relationships based on the full knowledge that you're able to make bona fide promises to customers because you know what your constraints are in terms of costs, resources, and capacities. So while we're all living in this world of react and survive is a word I've used on here, your days fly by. And what tends to happen over time is that organizations who are in this constantly having to react mode, that becomes the norm. So in other words, it starts to feel very normal that you're constantly having to react to unexpected demand. And I speak from personal experience, you can get very, 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 very busy dealing with the sort of rigors of the 9 to 5 day of trying to deal with customers. Just before I go on, is anybody experiencing, or does anybody kind of experience this kind of unexpected demand? It can be an upturn or a downturn. Okay. It's all very quiet, but I'm assuming people are getting into a situation where there are constant changes from their sort of customer base. Okay. While you're in this sort of constant react mode, there's a bit of a problem. And what the problem is you need to work out how to grow. And you have a few options for growing your organizations. And the diagram here talks about some combination of delivering your existing products and services to existing customers, or potentially selling the same products and services to new customers, which is kind of the top left of the diagram there. Or alternatively, you might want to sell your existing products and services to new customers, which is kind of this top right hand side of the diagram here. And there's no right or wrong to this. But what I'm trying to explain here is that whilst you're in this constant mode of having to react to the real world, to our real life situation here, you have very little time, or can make very little time, to plan some sort of strategic or deliberate type of growth, whether it's some combination of new or existing products and services, or new and or existing customers. But irrespective of how you go about this, it's really hard to kind of, and the phrase I've used here is to plan your growth in this situation, which potentially may feel like chaos. Okay, I can hear noises. I'm assuming. Okay, any questions, guys, before I carry on?
I think everyone's writing in the chat, David. I don't know if you can see that.
I can't, no. Just bear with me. Right there. Okay, I'm just going to try something else, guys, on my screen, because I can't see the chat screen, unfortunately. Okay. So let me stop sharing my screen, see if that helps. Bear with me. There we go. Right, I can now see the chat, but I can't see my slides, so apologies for that. But yeah, I'm seeing things in here like massive downturn. Yes, definitely downturn after upturn. And like I said, a lot of these comments aren't surprising. We're finding this with all sorts of organizations we've been working with over the last 12 months. And part of me wants to say, well, this may feel like business, pre-COVID, pre-Brexit even. This is probably still largely true, where it's quite hard to figure out what's going to happen next week, never mind next month. And if you're really busy trying to deal with that situation, irrespective, as I said, of COVID and Brexit, to be able to make the time to say, well, hang on a minute, guys, we need to do a time out here. We need to think about how we're actually going to grow in a very sustainable and a very deliberate way, whilst we're trying to run at 200 miles an hour and react to all this unexpected change. But as I said, I think for most people, this has been exacerbated, not only by Brexit, but obviously more so by COVID. A session we ran quite recently, one chap was explaining he can't plan tomorrow, or he's not in a position to be able to plan what's going to happen tomorrow, because there are so many unknowns in his business. But what we're trying to get you to think about here on the growth curve sessions is, first of all, just to recognize that is the situation, and secondly, that there are ways of trying to articulate, not just for yourself as individuals, but for people who you work with in your organizations, to start this conversation about, we need to start thinking about some sort of structured way of developing new capabilities to actually grow in some sort of predefined way. Okay, so I'm going to flip back to my screen again. And like I said, apologies, I'm not sure how this is working, but when I share my screen, I can't see the chat. So if somebody's got a question, please physically shout up, turn your mic off and shout up, and we can go through some questions if we need to. So let's see. Let's try that. Okay. So we're in this situation where we're having to react to unexpected stuff. But at the same time, we want to try and work out how to plan for growth. So I've called this duality of keeping the lights on and growing at the same time. So My suggestion is, or what Growth Curve is actually all about, is developing this articulation of where are we today, where are we really today, and where do we need to be tomorrow, and how do we get from where we are today to where we want to be tomorrow. Now, these are really in some ways obvious questions, and they're really simple questions, but the thing I've found from a lot of sort of personal experiences is when you ask anybody in an organization to explain where they think the company is today, you're going to get a whole mix of very very good and very justifiable answers, but I suspect most of the answers will be quite different, which basically tells you that different people in your organization will have a perception or an individual view of where your company is today. And it gets even more difficult when you start to ask questions about, well, how do you want your company to look? How do you want it to be at some point in the future? And a lot of the conversations we have on Growth Curve start with, well, I need to increase my revenues from X to Y, or I need 50 new customers, or I need 200 likes on LinkedIn or YouTube or something. That's all good stuff, but it doesn't get you into this conversation about being very clear about describing what success looks like for your company, because success means different things to different people. So as business owners, your measure of success might be to be sitting on the beach in 5 years' time, and the money just pours in while you're sipping your pina colada, and the company runs itself. And that's a good goal to have. However, for the other people in your organization, they're potentially going to have different goals, maybe short-term goals. And some of those different perspectives on what's desirable can be, initially, they can appear to be quite opposing to each other. So I'm sure most of you can relate to chatting to people within your organization. And when I say within your organization, I would actually also include your customers and your suppliers in this statement. But if you start to ask questions about where do you see this company going, or how would you like to describe this company in a few years' time, you're going to get quite different answers. And I want to stress point, that's okay. That's almost to be expected. So I've used the word strategy on the slide here, and all strategy is, I mean, there are so many books and publications and articles about strategy. It is really quite straightforward. It boils down to these kind of three questions. Where are we today? Where do we want to be tomorrow? And how do we get from today to tomorrow? And if you can fully answer those questions as a group of people, or as an organization, I should say, then you're in a really strong position to think about planning for growth. So before I crack on, any comments on that? And I can see the chat box now. Any thoughts on this at all? Okay.
There's nothing in the chat.
Well, here's the question: is it making sense? Is what I'm saying making sense? Good stuff. I get worried that I'm waffling on about strategy and today and tomorrow, and potentially I can leave people behind. So I've got a question there from Dawn. Oh no, sorry, from Genevieve, I think the name is. How far into tomorrow? We're going to come on to that in a second. So good question. How far into tomorrow? Cool. Okay. So I'll keep going, and please shout up if this stops making sense. So I've talked about which journey. So let me go back onto the slide. So I'm hoping you can all see a slide that says welcome to your growth curve. Okay, so the very first question we explore in the masterclass, or in the first masterclass, is where do you want to be tomorrow? And what does that even mean? And the question we were asking in the chat box there how far ahead? And these are all good questions. And there's no right or wrong or good or bad answer to this. But what's really important is that you work with your organizations, your people, your colleagues, your partners, and you have this conversation where you capture answers to those questions. And in one sense, you can make the case that the actual answer you end up with, I mean, obviously it's very, very, very important, but it's kind of okay if it's not completely right, because the important thing of this is not getting the right answer. The important thing is that you're having the conversation about what the future looks like. And a really nice way of doing this is to come up with what we call SMART objectives. And I won't go through this now, we don't have enough time, but in the sessions we talk about how you create statements which describe your future state. And a really nice way of thinking about this is if you were to walk into your organization in 3-4 years time, let's say, and look around and then describe it to somebody. If you were to describe to that somebody what you see, how would you do that? What language would you use? What terminology? What's important to notice to the extent where you feel like you should describe it? And we'll get into all sorts of things here. We talk about people being busy. We talk about obviously revenues and sales, products. We talk about market positioning. We talk about range of products. We talk about employee satisfaction, all sorts of different things. The trick to this is to agree a relatively small number of SMART objectives. And so SMART is an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, accurate, repeatable, and timely. And again, we'll cover this in the class. But it's just a way of writing on a piece of paper what tomorrow looks like, so you can actually measure yourself against it. So let me just keep pushing on for a second. So let's go back to that previous idea of where are we today and where do we want to be tomorrow, and how do we get from today to tomorrow? So on the growth curve, we focus on 5 areas. The first area being setting these SMART objectives, this future state. And then we focus on 4 sort of key areas in your business which help you or should help you achieve progress towards those 4 SMART objectives. So the first one we look at, I used to call this marketing, but we've refined this. We now talk about brand management. And what we do in the growth curves session, we help you look at your own brand, and in some exercises we look at each other's brands as well, and we try to work out how we assess that brand. And we introduce a tool called the 4 R's. Again, I don't have time to go through those here, but it's just a way of almost kind of marking your brand and saying, yes, my brand's good or good enough. But what I put on the slide here is what we're really trying to do. We're trying to get and then keep customer attention to the extent where we can start to get more confidence about creating an upturn in sales, because obviously that's the whole point of branding and marketing, is to get the phone ringing, basically. So that's one area we look at, and it is in fact the first session we touch on. The second session then says, well, if your branding activities are successful, how do you prepare your business to cope with that planned increase in demand? So in other words, if you have a marketing campaign and the emails start popping in, the customer orders start appearing, how do you pre-plan this? And how do you get your resources in place? When I say resources, I don't just mean people. It can be anything in your organization which you need to fulfill that customer demand. So we talk about financial forecasting because, of course, you need to have your finances clarified to be able to work out how to start to create opportunities to prepare that capacity. And the other thing I'd stress, just going back to the message in the chat box, is that we're talking about several years here. We're talking about a perception of what could happen or what we want to happen between today and, in this example, year 3, maybe year 4. Which takes me right back to my original point, which is it won't be right. You won't get this right because nobody can fully predict the future. But my point is, unless you have something agreed, then you're in danger of not being able to plan for growth overall. The fourth area we touch on is, okay, so you have your brand, you're having lots of great interaction with new customers, maybe for new products and services. You've got your resources in place. There's no nasty surprise. You've got the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time because you're prepared for it. But you've got these processes, and I've called them operational processes here, which are really clunky. We don't have a sales process. We don't have a planning process. We don't have a buying process. Or we do have a process, but it's not written down. And everybody does it in a different way. Potentially, we're wasting an awful lot of time here by having what I would call incapable business processes. So in the third session, we go into this in some detail. We start to talk about how do you get more agile? How do you make your processes work right first time, every time, just in time, in a totally predictable way? So it goes back to this scenario that when a customer says, can we just have X on Friday? You can take the view that, well, actually, I know my business resources and processes can only get me that. You can only help me fulfill that order by next Tuesday. But because I know that in advance, I can say to my customer, no, I can't get it to you on Friday, but I can guarantee 100% delivery on Tuesday. So how do you get to that level of knowledge about your own capabilities in your organization so you can make those promises to customers? And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, people. I'm sure you've heard an awful lot of stuff about leadership and management and people, but we touched on it in the last session on the growth curve, because what we want to do is we want to really get you to think about how do you really infuse yourself really, and how do you model yourself to lead this constant journey of change? Because what will happen between year 1 and year 3, or year X on this diagram, is you're constantly going to have to be tweaking things, improving processes, perhaps adjusting your financial plans, not your forecasts. That's a different thing. And maybe you're going to have to constantly retweak your brand. And what does that even mean? How do you go about this? So to make those changes, the people you employ or who work with you need to be on the ball. They need to be changing things potentially constantly. Now, if you haven't defined what it is they need to change before they change it, you can't change it. So in other words, how do you get everybody on the same page? How do you get everybody pulling in the same direction? And perhaps most importantly, what's your role in all this? Are you a leader, a manager? Do you play a role in this? Do you step back and let somebody else do it? And so on and so forth. So we get into those discussions about people and their link to processes. So let's just give you a bit of a flavor of what this can look like. So the way growth curve tends to work is we provide people with lots of questions. The attendees leave each session with many, many, many questions. And that's ideal because what the masterclasses will help you do, they'll help you, first of all, articulate your current situation. And they'll help you discover the most important questions which you need to examine with your colleagues back at base. The thing I'm a big fan of, if you're an individual, even if you're in a small company, 2, 3, 4 employees, the only way you're going to be successful at growing your business is that everybody has the same understanding of what's going on. They have the same understanding of where you are today, the same understanding of where you want to be tomorrow, and perhaps very importantly, who's supposed to do what, when, and how, because you don't have to do everything at the same time. So what the growth curve concept does, it allows you to identify those initiatives which help you improve your brand. And there's just some examples on there. And perhaps which initiative you should do now. And it doesn't have to be year 1, year 2. The time for scale is kind of up to yourself. But the idea is that there's a logical sequence that says, maybe we should go and talk to our customers and ask them what they think of us before we change our brand. Maybe our brand's great already and we just don't know it is. Maybe. So there's a sequence of initiatives which you're going to discover, which makes sense for you to go through over time back at base to progress you along this diagram. So maybe we're going to do this stuff first, some stuff second, and so on and so forth. It's the same on the financial side of things. Do you know what your costs are today? Because if you don't know what your costs are or where your spend is, then any predictions you make about planning for sort of sales and revenues are going to be pie in the sky. We can all forecast. I watched Dragon's Den last night with my son on the iPlayer, and there's some interesting forecasts there about companies being $1 million turnover within the next 12 months, and that's possible. Of course, it's possible. But if they don't have the resources in place to fulfill those orders, then that demand will dry up very, very, very quickly. So how do you kind of bring together costs and sales together in some sort of sensible financial forecast? And then most importantly, how do you construct your business plan around those financial constraints? So that's something we cover on the second session down here. And then just very, very briefly, operational agility. So what are your processes? Where do we add value? Where is the waste? What do we need to change? Do we need to change anything? But whatever it is we do decide to change, how do we plan it? Because we can't just change everything tomorrow. Maybe there's some logical sequence that says we improve our marketing process first, then the sales process, then the operations process, and so on and so forth. And then finally, people. Who's doing what today? Why are they doing it? Is it the right thing to do now? Is it the wrong thing to do now? Is it the wrong thing to do full stop? Who needs to do what tomorrow? And what skills do we have today? And what skills do we need tomorrow to be able to fulfill this this planned demand or this planned growth? So again, we get into this in quite a lot of detail. There's a few different tools we use. One we focus on is called RACI. We look at lean and waste on the process side of things, and we bring all these kind of tools together. And what tends to happen is by the end of the fourth session, you should be in a position where you've got a good view on your SMART objectives. You've got a reasonable view of potential timeframes, and you've got some ideas about what needs to be done now in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, 12 months' time. So we start to populate this diagram, and this constitutes your growth curve or your single statement where you're all planning to grow together as an organization whilst you're trying to react constantly to this constant change. Okay, let me just wrap this up. So before I hand over to Neil, who will explain it a bit more about the growth curve program as a whole, just to set your expectation a little bit, should you attend the sessions, what seems to work very, very well is we have small breakout sessions. We have companies who work who've never met before. You're not in competition with each other. I should stress we're very careful we don't put competitors in the same groups. And we have great discussions and run through a number of exercises using these new tools and techniques to work out where people are and where they want to be in terms of branding, finance, operations, and people and change. And then very finally, between each session, what we ask you to do is to take your learning away from that particular day or that particular session and go and experiment with it back at base. The top tip, if I could only share one top tip for making all this successful, is don't feel like you should be developing a growth curve all by yourself for yourself. The only way this works well is to get buy-in from other people. And the only way you get people to buy into growth is you almost have to, perhaps in a slightly Machiavellian way, you almost have to help them discover it for themselves. Because if you can empower people to first of all say, hey, I recognize a problem or an opportunity, and if they're in a situation where they can be allowed to solve it for themselves, then the motivation levels go through the ceiling. And that's key. That's absolutely critical to this. So my top tip is don't develop a growth curve by yourself. Get it out on a big piece of paper. The bigger, the better. Ideally brown paper if you have any. Put it on the wall where you work. Get the Post-its out. and have that conversation with your colleagues about how you're going to do this. Because once you're all talking, you've got a great chance for quite literally getting on the same page with growth. Okay, hopefully that's sparked your interest and given you some things to think about. And hopefully I get to see you soon at forthcoming sessions. So if there are no questions, Neil, can I perhaps hand over to yourself?
Thank you, David. Hopefully I can get my my camera to start working. There we go. So thanks for that, David. Good morning, everybody. My name's Neil Webb. I'm a high growth business advisor with SEMLEP, and I work specifically on the growth curve program with scale up and pre-scale up businesses to introduce them to the masterclass processes David has kind of set out a little bit about, but also to help businesses understand a little bit more about the journey that they're on and help provide them access to a range of different resources, including grant funding and further referral opportunities to other organisations. So I'm just going to quickly, if I can, share my screen. Let's look at this one here. And hopefully everyone will be able to see my presentation in a second. If I can put it up in front of me. Okay, can everyone see my presentation? Is a question. David, would you give me a nod? I can see you there.
Yep, I can.
Yeah, excellent stuff.
Okay.
So like I say, my name is Neil Webb and I'm from SEMLEP, and following on from today's call, if the growth curve program seems of interest to you, I have my details on my final slide, but I would be delighted to talk you through the program in a bit more detail and help you understand whether it's a program that's suitable for you. Either ways, if it's not, I think what hopefully you'll get from the call today is actually SEMLEP is here to support all types of businesses of different sizes, and if the growth curve program isn't right for you, then my colleagues alongside Ruth at the Growth Hub will be able to provide you with additional signposting and resources as well. So hopefully you'll capture that from the call that our role is to support. But the growth curve program itself involves the masterclasses that David spoke about. We have a range of partners that we work with. We work with Bedford, University of Bedford, University of Northampton, and Cranfield University to support businesses to go through. But actually, the initial interactions with the growth curve team, myself and Jacqueline and Gordon, my colleagues, cover the whole of the SEMLEP area. But what we do is we try and encourage, as David set out in his presentation, for you to spend some time on your business rather than in your business and actually looking at the business in more detail. And the program was designed because there is funding available, grant funding available through the program. I think it was designed to provide businesses not just access to funding, but the kind of support that will maximise the return on that funding for the funders and also for you and your businesses. And so how we've structured the programme is we establish an initial relationship with you and do what's called a diagnostic to really try and understand a little bit more about the direction of the business, where it's going, what it's trying to achieve, areas perhaps where it might need some help to identify potential signposting opportunities, but as much as anything else to help you as a business become prepared to have asked yourselves perhaps some of the questions that will be relevant and useful when you're actually entering into the masterclass process. And that as a combination of that diagnostic and that knowledge on your business and the support of the masterclasses through the universities, you're perhaps able to better identify areas in which you need to invest in your business, or you need to grow your business and require the grant funding and support. So it's a very complete program. Like I say, starting with a diagnostic with a high growth business advisor, then stepping into the university masterclasses, coming out the back of that, and where opportunities have been identified to perhaps look at some matched funding from the growth curve programs grant funds, but also, and I think it's something that perhaps we don't cover off enough on the programme, is that the links to the universities are extremely useful. There are further programmes that can dovetail into the Growth Curve programme that are offered by the University of Bedford, by Cranfield and by the University of Northampton. So it's really about getting you into the ecosystem and allowing us to help you through Growth Curve, through the universities, through the Growth Hub, to access the support that that is out there for you as a business. So I won't take up masses of time because David's done a great job in terms of explaining some of the elements of the masterclass itself, and how that works. I will obviously put my details on the screen for you to see. We'd be delighted to talk to you, so please do take a note of my email address, or feel free to give me a call on the number there. I'm happy to talk in more detail about the programme itself, what I can tell you about the workshops, and hopefully introduce you to the programme if it's appropriate for you from there. What I would say is that obviously up next we have Simon Phillips, who's actually been on to the masterclass, and he's going to give us a bit of a detail about his experience and how it's helped his business. And I think we've got a question and answer at the end. So if there's anything specifically I've kind of rattled through there, anything specifically questions wise that you'd like to ask, then please feel free either to contact me directly or to catch up at the end for the Q&A. So rattle through there, Simon, to give you time to talk about what you're doing. So I'll hand across to you if that's okay.
That's great. Yeah, thanks very much, Neil. Right, morning everybody. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Just confirmation.
Yeah, I can see it, Simon.
Okay, thanks, David. Right, let's get this going. Right, okay. So I'm Simon Phillips from Tech, Fire and Security. This is a picture of us all outside our office, all the vans. So our company was established in 2011 and we're based in Marston Mortain. We have 6 employees, and the core of our business is offering fire and security solutions into commercial and educational clients within a 30-mile radius of Bedford. This is a picture of our old office, and this was really the start of our intro to looking into ways of exploring and growing our business. These are some of the pain points that we was going back in the time. This is around about 2018, 2019. So we had this, we had a small office space. We only had 1 parking space for all of us. So that in itself kind of limits your the way you think about growing your business, because instead of thinking about growing your business, you're just thinking about, well, we haven't got enough room to have any more people joining you, so it's sort of quite limiting. We was in serviced offices, so we had a lack of profile and visibility. Certain limiting beliefs for myself and my fellow director, really based around lack of knowledge really in knowing how to grow the business. We did have insufficient systems and processes. We had a lack of role definition, more so for the directors. Basically, as a lot of directors do, they wear many hats throughout the day. So you're kind of always trying to cover each other as opposed to having defined roles of what you're doing. Slight basic lack of business knowledge, and our client base was not quite diversified enough as we would have liked at the time. So our introduction to SEMLEP, so I found SEMLEP just basically off a just looking around on the web, just really looking for some help and guidance. Come across SEMLEP. filled in an online form. Gordon Spark from SEMLEP came in to see us. We did a SWOT analysis on the business. We had already done one of those, but it was good to actually sit down with someone from outside the business just to look at it and really question us and sort of delve in a bit more deeper to maybe bring out a bit more honesty about some of the things that we were trying to find and develop as a business. Yeah, Gordon, after meeting us, realised that we had some potential and then recommended the growth care scheme. So I went to Luton University for a couple of days over a few weeks, which David, who you've heard from earlier, was the tutor there. And we learned the things like the RACI, as he's talked about, and just other things. But it was also useful for meeting other businesses as well. So as part of that, we did strategic planning, the marketing and finance, and then operations planning, change of management. And then the outcome of that was then we had then some actionable points to then follow to take forward. How we overcame the challenges. So SEMLEP offered us some other workshops to go on. So we went on a finance series of workshops, which basically helped us to learn how we would pitch our company. So you could pitch in your company if you was either going to sell it, or pitch your company if you was looking for finance into your business. So where an external investor would see that you are a viable business to invest money into. So following on from that, once we've been on that course, we had all the tools available to apply for the grant, which was to help us with the fit out of our new premises. So that all went through, and then we purchased our premises in November last year, and so we moved out of the old offices. Also, with all the other information that we'd had from SEMLEP, we implemented a CRM to overcome some of our systems and processes. We're a step close to now finalising roles within the business. There's still a bit more work to do on that, but we're certainly well on the way. We've employed a new technician in the meantime, which actually happened last year, more or less in line with the new office building. And this year we've implemented a marketing and sales strategy. So this is actually our new office now. So as you can see, it's a lot brighter than previous. Allows us to sort of room to think and to grow in. It's provided us all the things really that are some of our weaknesses. So we're on a small industrial park, so it's increased our visibility. We've got some individual identity now, so we can be seen. It's great for the morale of everyone's staff included, and also the also myself as a director. It's just good. We've basically I've put down here things like excuse me, think like a large business. Well, some of the stuff SEMLEP teaches you is that even though when you start off, when you're at a smaller early growth stage, is thinking a bit bigger than you actually are to enable yourself to then grow into being a bigger business, and knowing that there's no barriers that can potentially hinder your growth going forward. So again, we had great advice and help with that. I've also got on here about the journey is more important than the outcome. So again, you can plan and put everything in place about what you want to do, but at the same time, you have got to try and as opposed to striving all the time and feeling you're not getting anywhere, it's important to be enjoying the journey on the way, because that will then, because your destination can always change, but your journey along the way has got to be hopefully as enjoyable as possible. So just a brief summary, just to wrap up. I remember going back from a point of where we was and feeling a little bit possibly depressed about the business and not really knowing the ways to kind of get us to where we wanted to. And so the biggest thing that I did with the business and my business partner is we gave ourselves the gift of time to actually explore things outside of the, constantly working within the business to explore these opportunities, which has kind of got us to where we are now in a lot better place. So the real investment we made was to give up our time to look into these, to look into the opportunities that are available out there. Following on from the grant moving to the office, we've also had other things that SEMLEP have done, and I've recently done a peer-to-peer program, which ran over 6 weeks, which is really great chance to again meet other businesses and form relationships outside of that group with other businesses. Again, great to bounce ideas off of each other. And that also offered some one-to-one mentoring as well, which was really good. So I hope that's helpful to anyone who was potentially in the position that we was in a couple of years ago. And it is quite good that actually putting all this together, I've realised that we've made some good progress over the last couple of years, which is good. I've left my contact there. If anyone after the webinar wants to get in touch, I'm more than happy to have a chat with anyone and further sort of run through my experience. And if I can help in any way, I'd be more than happy to do so. And that pretty much concludes that for now. I hope that was useful.
That really was. Thank you very, very much, Simon. And to David for giving us an update on what we can do to help ourselves grow. Now, does anybody, we've got a few minutes left, does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask Simon or David or Neil or me? I love stunned silence is really good. Well, let me give you a sort of an overview, sort of just to round it all up again, is that the Growth Hub is here to help all businesses. So we hope to add value to those businesses that are either starting out, starting their growth, scaling up, like if they were scaling up and want to join the Growth Curve program, then we're here for that. And we're also here, as Simon said, for the peer-to-peer networks. We offer connections, as I said, to the business support ecosystem. So it really doesn't matter where your business is in its life cycle stage. There will be a point in which we should be able to help you, even if it's just acting as a sounding board to understand where you're at and where you want to go. Just before I finish in there is a question, and it's a general question. I am running an engineering design consultancy, Clarity Engineer Design. We offer research and development, product, prototype and test rig development services from concept generation to the finished product. Primary obstacle in front of our growth is lack of opportunities to meet potential clients. Networking has become almost impossible. Would you be able to recommend real working platforms? Skills and services could be shared with those looking for it? Good question. As a government-funded organisation, we are unable to introduce people to other businesses to which to sell their services privately. We have to constantly be impartial in our introductions, which is why we do the programmes we introduce to the business support ecosystem that is out there. However, there is a program called peer-to-peer networking program that we ran the pilot of that's just finished, and there will be a new program coming out next year, and that will allow you to engage with different businesses from different sectors, and also maybe to help you engage more in finding clients and know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So that might be something for you. Do Neil or David have any other insight into where this gentleman can find?
Yeah, it's a quick question I've been asked in the past. I think the thing which seems to work very, very well is trying to figure out what your customers are, what subjects your customers are interested in. And it's it's a very obvious thing to say, but the thing I've noticed is that if you're able to work out what everybody's talking about in terms of subject matter, it's a slightly different conversation to here's my business, this is what we do. I use for myself, I do use LinkedIn a lot. And what's always surprises me is the amount of interest there is in subjects around the business or aspects of business I'm trying to push myself. So Dave, I can suggest, I can't recommend any sort of specific forums or platforms, but I think if you can figure out what keeps your customers awake at night, or what your customers are talking about, it doesn't necessarily have to be something you already provide, but maybe it's something you're very knowledgeable about as an individual. So then start to push that knowledge out through LinkedIn, for example, and get those conversations going that way. Not sure if that helps, but it's one way to think about it.
I can just add to that. I mean, I think we've been very fortunate over the last few months to have benefited from some very good LinkedIn training and ways in which we can actually develop our reach as an organisation to try and capture the opportunity of speaking to more clients, and I think that LinkedIn is definitely something that people perhaps don't consider in social media enough because of its business to business links. It can be extremely effective, but I think, kind of building on what David said, in real terms, you want to think about the problems your clients have that you're trying to solve, and actually give them that solution, and be very, very clear that you understand their problems, and do it as succinctly as you can, and show them that solution. Because there's a tendency when most businesses say we do everything, we can do anything, and actually if you're not specific enough about the problem that your customer has, then they're not going to be engaging with you and interested. And if you can push forward then the solution to that problem, that will help you. So I would say, as Ruth said, as David said, we're not marketing consultants. We're not able to refer you to particular businesses, but part of your market activity needs to include, particularly in current times, social media. I would say LinkedIn is the platform of choice for that at this point, depending on your product. If you're Instagram can be very good in some ways for certain products and services, but certainly from your perspective, in relation to the question about engineering, business to business, LinkedIn will be good. But it's about reviewing what you offer, and be very succinct about what it is that you offer, getting out there. So hopefully that helps a little bit as well.
Hopefully that answers the question. And to Terence, I apologise when I say next year. I was thinking of the financial year. So what I mean is this year, as in very, very soon for the new peer-to-peer. It's just so much planning. I forget where I am. Does anybody else have any questions before we go? No, that's brilliant. So I'd very much like to thank Simon, David and Neil for being on board, and there will be a slide that I think Sam will put up which will give you the Growth Hub contact details. If anybody would like to contact us, as I said, it doesn't matter what size your business is, it doesn't matter where you are in the life cycle stage in the life cycle of your business, whether you're starting out, whether you're struggling, whether you are regrowing, please contact us. There will be something that we'll be able to help with, even if it is just a sounding board to see where your business is. So the contact details are up there now, and I'd like to thank you all very much for participating today.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks all. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. By the way, that was wonderful. Really, really good. Thank you for doing that for us. Really appreciate it.
No, that's all right. It's my pleasure. It's to be honest, it's a privilege to be asked to speak to other businesses, and as I say, the whole programme has really helped us and continues to do so. So yeah, it's a privilege to be asked to speak, to be honest.
Wonderful. That's really, really helpful. I mean, that's hearing from a client's perspective how it's been helpful is much more powerful than us talking about it. As much as we believe in it and want to push it, it's more important what someone's experience will be. So yeah, thank you for that, and it was a very good presentation. So thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.